boardroom. This is the business of esports. The worlds of gaming and esports are evolving every day faster than ever before. With yougov's living data, you can probe into the real thoughts and behaviors of esports fans and gamers worldwide. If you're a team, a brand, an agency, or a rights holder, you should be talking with YouGov. They're partners with the biggest names in esports and the biggest brands all around the world, driving compelling results every single day. Check out yougov.com/BOE and schedule a call with YouGov today. From the keyboard to the boardroom, this is the Business of Esports weekly news show / post podcast live stream. I am Paul the Prophet Dawalibi. I'm joined today by my friends and co-hosts, the Honorable Judge Jimmy Baratta, Lindsay the Boss Poss, Jeff the Juice Cohen. For those of you who are new here, welcome. What we do is we cover the most pressing gaming and esports topics and news of the week, but we look at all of it through a business and C-suite lens. We dissect, we analyze the business implications of everything happening in this industry. And best of all, we get to do it live with you guys. You get to get in our faces, challenge us, ask questions. It makes it so much more fun. We know so many of you watch and lurk. That's okay, but it's a safe space. We encourage you guys to get involved. It makes it that much more exciting. How is everyone doing this week? Lindsay, how's your recovery?
It is it's slow, and unfortunately the flu has also hit my household and family this week, so everyone is just feeling like crap. Yeah, I was lucky enough. I actually happened to get my flu shot about a week before surgery just by happenstance. And I am the only one who is not ill. So I suppose I'm lucky in some ways and unlucky in others. But
I did want to say thank you
week.
to all of you guys, by the way, for picking up the slack last week. I felt like I was too easily replaced. I was hoping it would be way more, disjointed. Part of me was hoping it would crash and burn, right? Because obviously you need me, doesn't work without me. But that was exactly the opposite of what happened. You guys don't need me at all.
It helps having Chris at Coins. I mean,
I was going to say, he says, "You're welcome." Chris did a fantastic job.
Great stand-in.
Chris, it's not a me or you thing here, right? Like, you can join us so you and I could go toe to toe. This would be more fun, I think, on a weekly basis. Matt says, I need my profits take fixed. No offense to Jimmy, who did a good job last week. Super says, howdy. Alex says, hello. Alex, welcome. Matt says, Lindsay, the cough boss. Oh, my God. Where's the sad trombone?
That's pretty good.
And Antonio says, I hope to hear your opinion on kick.com, Amazon's YouTube. Antonio, you are absolutely going to get the kick.com story this week. Among other stories this week, there were a whole bunch which we should jump into, guys, unless you had anything. I say we jump into it. I will just tease the podcast this week. We had none other than Jordan Lazarus, who's the founder and CEO of an esports org called Xen, XEN. And it's cool because he's 23 years old and they've had some pretty big success around their org he's very young, obviously. And I highly recommend checking out that episode this week because really good insight, and what it takes to build and scale an org when you don't have a ton of experience necessarily. And some of the things they did that worked really well, I thought was interesting. So definitely tune into that. That's the podcast to expect this week. Adam says it's been too long. Adam, it has been too long. We've missed you. Glad to see you back in here. All right, guys, let's start. I'm not going to start with the kick.com story, Antonio, so you'll have to stick around, but we are going to get to that story because I did think it was interesting. Let's start with the Call of Duty League in the news this week. And Call of Duty League, not the greatest of headlines for them or for YouTube, frankly. It's kind of a surprising headline here. And the headline was CDL announces broadcast information and YouTube is conspicuously missing. So they posted essentially where you could watch the CDL matches that start, like for the new season, and they listed Twitch and they listed the Call of Duty website, but YouTube was completely missing. And the tweet said, "The season starts tomorrow. Here's where to watch." Again, with no YouTube in sight. Now, bit of background for anyone who didn't catch this when we talked about it originally. The league had signed a deal with YouTube for $160 million where it was broadcast exclusively on YouTube. It was really the biggest media rights deal that at the time, and still probably to this day, in esports. But clearly YouTube didn't want to renew, or clearly CDL didn't want to renew at whatever YouTube was offering, if they offered anything. But this relationship has fallen apart to the point where it's actually not even being broadcast on YouTube. So it's Twitch exclusive, essentially. Curious what you guys think of this. Jimmy, any thoughts on this, or Jeff?
Maybe this is just the the social media intern made a horrible mistake and forgot to put
I doubt it.
Our partner. I mean, that would be kind of funny. But because YouTube is so irrelevant, they just forgot them. No, I don't know. I mean, I had heard somewhere, and maybe we have the stats to back this up, or maybe we don't, but that the opening weekend of Call of Duty had done really well on new home. Is that possible?
It's possible. I don't think I
incomplete information, but
I don't think I saw that story. I mean, maybe one of you guys can look it up quickly, or Jimmy can look it up.
Yeah, I'll take a look and see if I can find it.
I mean, that would be interesting though, Jeff. Right?
I guess because my point was that would show that this was like, because you said this could be bad for both Activision and YouTube, and I think your assumption is that this probably means that maybe YouTube didn't want to renew the contract, which may or may not be the case. It probably was a bit of an overspend. But I kind of took it to say this is probably worse for YouTube. Granted, in the grand scheme of things, YouTube is fine, so it's irrelevant for YouTube because it's such a big company as part of Google. But I think this hurts YouTube a bit more than it hurt, or their reputation more than it hurts Activision, if the Call of Duty League went onto Twitch and did significantly better than it was doing on YouTube. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think of all the potential scenarios here, right? It's either the viewership wasn't good on YouTube, which it wasn't, right? And YouTube didn't want to renew, and that could mean they didn't want it at all. It could mean they wanted to pay some number that Activision didn't want to take. So that's one possibility, right? That the viewership wasn't good, and therefore YouTube wanted to pay some number less than what Activision was willing to take. How low that number is, if it was zero, I don't know. The other scenario is Activision Blizzard wanted to get away from YouTube, right? That they believed for some reason YouTube was hurting their league. That look, I want to believe that because I think very little of YouTube gaming and what they've done over the last few years there. But that seems a little hard to believe, right? Like you have to feel really good about the platform you're going to if you're giving up $160 million of media rights. I don't know. Jimmy?
It's complicated. I lean more with, I think, your starting theory, which was YouTube probably offered a low amount. Because again, to not even include the YouTube link, it only hurts Activision to not have as many viewers everywhere, right? That's the new streaming model, whether you're in gaming or music or video or any kind of media. You want as wide of an audience as possible. Some platforms do believe in exclusivity. I think the broader case of just lowering the paywall or the entry, that barrier to entry, is becoming more successful for brands to increase their audience, their viewership, and then monetize that way. So the fact that they were blatantly left off of this list is really, I think, more of a comment on the sour relationship between the two, because otherwise, to your point, Activision would want to include them just to get more viewers here and there. So I think YouTube offered probably a low amount that Activision turned down. I think I think honestly, we're seeing the fallout of a lot of the short-term greed and structure under the Kodak regime that were boosting, I think, that company or bolstering that company's position and standing, for their shareholders at that time, that are now kind of like we knew all along were not for the long-term best interests of the company, right? Taking an absurd contract as opposed to growing this audience organically across multiple channels, and something that wasn't going to renew. It's kind of sad to see, honestly. I think the Call of Duty brand is big enough to stand on its own, and I'm sure they'll get great viewership on Twitch, and I'm sure they probably will have YouTube distribution that's just not being advertised here. But I think the Activision team has a hole to dig out of, and I don't see anyone rush. The teams are going to want payment right off of this viewership. They're going to want a TV rights deal the same way they were expecting all these big sponsorship deals that fell through about a year and a half ago, when all those public filings were the talk of the town. So I don't know. It feels like a loss for the gaming industry at large to not have a relationship on you. As much as we criticize YouTube, you can't discount or knock the viewership and the audience that's on that platform. And as big as Call of Duty is, you would expect them to at least have some presence there. But this is not an oversight, and this is it's just not good for viewership in general.
To be clear, I'm sure they have some presence there. Right?
Oh, yeah.
Like I haven't checked. It's probably easy for me to just pull up a tab right now and check. But like my guess is all of the VODs are up on YouTube. I think it's been a rejection of YouTube's live streaming business more than anything else that has not lived up to expectations. Lindsay, I don't know if you had thoughts.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Is we've been in this period. It feels like a stagnation where everything VOD is on YouTube and everything live is on Twitch, and every time I sort of think that there's going to be a shakeup in that structure, there's just not, and this is yet another sign of that. So I don't necessarily know if this affects people who watch it that much. But I just don't think we could keep continuing on the same route for the next 10 years and everyone would probably be happy. But this kind of stagnation doesn't necessarily lead to great like innovation or great new activations for fans or great new fan experiences. And that's the part that kind of makes me sad is I feel like each player is getting more entrenched in what they're good at and not really making serious moves to improve on other things.
It's true, right? You would think that competition from YouTube Live would have created more innovation in the space, but it just wasn't a competitive enough product. I just want to catch up here. Chris says 192,000 peak, which is decent, like really good, quite good for Call of Duty, considering what they were doing on YouTube before. Also added, week 1 of CDL 2023 had the 4th highest viewership in the Call of Duty League era. That's interesting also. I mean, again, I don't know. Is it the failure of YouTube? Is it the success of Twitch? Is it right? It's hard to pin down causality here, right? Like, what is the reason this is better? The question is now Call of Duty League is without $160 million of revenue from YouTube. Where do you make up that hole? And what happens to the teams who, were promised this kind of payday and revenue split? That's a big hole to fill. $160 million. And it was over 3 years. So, call it $55 million a year or whatever. But that's still a big hole to fill. I don't know how you generate $55 million a year to make up for the lost YouTube revenue. Chris says YouTube doesn't do a good job. Christian says YouTube doesn't do a good job at promoting CDL or Overwatch League. Now that I think of it, same thing with their big money streamers. True. I think I'm curious if you guys think that's true.
That was one of the doc's criticisms, wasn't it? That YouTube wasn't even promoting his own stream or tagging him in things that he was a part of, that they did nothing to support the creators that they had these big contracts with. So I think that's a good point by Christian.
Also, hi guys. Matt says, agree with you, Paul. Even though YouTube gaming is one of the worst streaming platforms, it still has a huge reach. Seems like Activision is cutting off its nose to spite its face. I think they just believe that the VOD stuff is better, and if YouTube's not going to pay what they want, they'd rather sort of cut YouTube off altogether on the live side. I don't know. Again, I'm trying to put myself in that boardroom. Any final thoughts on this, guys, before we move on to because I thought it would be good to go from this to the story that Antonio mentioned, which was, again, platform related, where this week we saw the launch of a new competitive platform, another hat sort of thrown into the mix here. And the headline on this article, there was a number of articles about this new site, kick.com. But this one I thought encapsulated a lot of it. It says top Twitch creator endorses platform connected to crypto gambling site. So this is Trainwreck's huge streamer, Canadian actually, or lives in Canada. I think he's American originally, but lives in Canada.
Oh my God, of course you had to throw it in.
So he can gamble. He lives there so he can gamble legally, actually. He had made headlines recently because he had generated $360 million from his partnership with stake.com, which was an online gambling site. So he had generated the site had paid him $360 million over the last however many years for him to gamble on his stream. Now, Twitch shut down basically gambling for the most part. And in response, now Trainwreck is launching his own Twitch competitor called kick.com. And the announcement was all about sort of power to the creators. So on kick.com, creators keep 95% of the revenue, and the company only keeps 5% compared to the 50-50 split on Twitch. They also said that they would do all kinds of sort of creator friendly things. There was a long list of creator friendly initiatives that they would be doing. And kick.com, with Trainwreck basically launched and garnered some interest, but only today did it come out that the backers behind kick.com was actually Stake, was the online gambling company that had paid Trainwreck so much money to gamble on Twitch over the last year. So it's a online gaming company, like gambling company, online casino company, backing kick.com. And obviously gambling is allowed on the site. There's the hot tub streams, there's the just chatting streams. Also, there's a lot of stuff. They promise more transparency in terms of what's allowed, what's not allowed, because Twitch has sort of struggled with that. So they're trying to be different. And I'm curious if you guys think this has a chance of success. What do you think of the different revenue split? What do you think of the backers or investor here? Just your overall thoughts.
So sorry, the gambling, just so I clarify, the gambling site owns the live streaming platform?
Yes, they're the financial backers.
Got it.
And real quick, guys, I do want to jump in with a cool stat here, because for those of you that follow traditional sports, Aaron Judge agreed to a 9-year deal with the Yankees, right, Jeff? $360 million comes out to about 110,000 a day, I think was what was the math breakdown on that. So the fact that Trainwreck saw that from stake.com and gaming, just another fun stat to show your friends, your family in comparison. To me here, I think there's plenty of, we had Stream Hatchet on the live show, I think 2 or 3 weeks ago, right before Thanksgiving. We broke down the Q3 viewership, and Twitch's dominance, what it was 2 years ago, it's showing that there are room for other players, which I didn't believe to be the case. While Mixer shut down and they didn't find success, I think that was more a reflection of their approach. So when you have a niche like gambling that this platform kick.com is enabling, that's a huge that's a huge value. That's a huge reason to attract creators in an audience. So I do like that they have a specific niche and that they obviously have stake.com backing. Why it's not just an extension on stake.com, I'm not sure. Maybe there's legalities there. Maybe they're dipping their toe in the water. My question here, my concern is this 95% to the creators model, because how is that sustainable? We just saw Twitch and YouTube raise their or change the relationship that they have with their creators, paying them out less, claiming that their costs, that they're not making money on the platform, that their costs are increasing. And this is such a drastic step in the opposite direction. It has to be, I don't know, what do you guys think? This has to be just a gimmick or something to attract creators for the first year or two while they're building. And then we'll also see that go from 95 to 75 to lower.
if it makes sense once it comes out that they're owned by the gambling site, because they're not viewing this as the moneymaker, right? This is marketing.
Right.
So I assume, it makes sense in the sense of you think about it that way. And really the people who they're trying to attract are the gamblers that are going to then watch, the streamers who they don't care about monetizing them, their eyeballs. They care about monetizing them when they go to the gambling site, which actually makes a lot of sense. And Jimmy, I think you made the great point about the, Twitch. I don't think they're beatable at this point from another like mass market broad website that's trying to cater to everyone, because I think the network effects are too strong. But when you go down to these niches, particularly ones that Twitch won't allow, I think they can definitely win. And I actually think it's a good way to go about competing with Twitch.
Yeah, I mean, the Christian makes an interesting point. Wow, this new Twitch front page is interesting. Oh wait, I mean, it does look very much like Twitch's front page. Very, very much. I thought it was interesting. I just put it up right now. Right, Trainwreck has 16.4K viewers roughly, and the top category is slots with 18.5K. So he's still the majority of the audience on the website right now. But I was on the fence on this originally. And then when I found out stake.com was the owner, right? The online casino was the owner. I've slowly migrated towards thinking this may be kind of genius, right? Because if you look at who was gambling on Twitch, a lot of the big streamers were gambling on Twitch. A lot of them were making lots of money gambling on Twitch. Trainwreck, XQC, Corinna Kopf. Like there are some very big names. Just between XQC and Trainwreck, you have two of the biggest streamers in the world. If they can lure XQC away to kick.com with a huge payday, right? And basically the money they were paying him on Twitch anyways, why not have a platform of your own? Seems like an interesting play, right? Like seems like maybe it could work. Maybe this is the way to sort of not end up like Mixer. Because it's money they were going to spend anyways, right? It's money they were going to spend on streamers anyways. I'm just curious to get your like clear-cut vote, guys. A year from now, is this Mixer or is this a legitimate alternative to Twitch? Or is it something else?
It's probably neither, but it's not. I don't think it'll be Mixer, because I don't think they'll fail so long as they're getting the eyeballs that are that are translating to the gambling site. So short of regulation, I mean, there's probably a lot of things that they're doing that maybe aren't kosher in different states or different areas that that's who knows. But short of getting shut down for that, I think this will be around. Now it won't be anything towards making a dent on Twitch, but I think it can surpass Twitch in this niche, which is all they want. If gambling was 0.5% of Twitch, they can take 60-70% market share in that vertical, especially because Twitch has gotten rid of that vertical. But I think it could be successful.
Lindsay?
That was precisely the analysis I was going to give, is that gambling market is a little bit opaque to me just because I'm not in it, but I do know that the people who are in it and into it are very in it and into it. And that population obviously is in need of this service, considering Twitch has all but banned gambling. So, and from a regulation perspective, I actually think it makes it almost easier to have everything in one place, rather than unclear rules on several different platforms. So I think that it may be preferable from that standpoint as well. So I think, like Jeff said, I don't think this is a Mixer. I don't think it's necessarily a high value competitor to Twitch, but I think it serves this market very well and continues to survive after a year.
Yeah, I just want to extend the thought one bit before we move on. Ironically, I think this is what like an esports entertainment group should have done, right? Put content and gambling together. This seems like this could work, right? And I would argue even the other esports betting players today should be looking at this going, hey, maybe we should do this, right? Maybe we should have our own platform where we do this. And so, I'd be curious to see how many take note here. Because I don't think with the weight of someone like Trainwreck, this goes away tomorrow. And the weight of a stake.com, who has, virtually, pockets so deep that they could probably keep this going for the next however many years. So it'll be interesting to see how many other categories, though, grow beyond the slots category. Because if that's the only category, it will exist, but it'll be a niche player, right? Like people will go there to watch slots, which it's its own thing. I used to watch a lot of train wrecks. It's fun watching someone lose millions of dollars and then win millions of dollars and then lose millions of dollars. There is something entertaining in that. So that's an interesting niche in and of itself. But I think they, if they're smart, they can branch out to other areas. And look, frankly, maybe we should stream this live stream on kick.com also. We'll have to look into that. So stay tuned. Matt says in a year, Twitch will still be top dog, undoubtedly. I mean, a year is not that long, Matt. So I think I probably agree. But the better question is like, what happens in 5 years or 10 years? Chris says the bots wasn't me, I swear. Sure, Chris. I'm not going to put those chats up on the screen, but we all know where it came from, Chris. We all know. All right, guys, let's move on. Let's talk about Bethesda here. Now we did an Activision story, so let's stay within the Microsoft family here. And this was from the Lex Friedman podcast, which I am actually not a listener of, but I know he has a lot of listeners, a lot of followers. And the headline is Bethesda's developing another mobile game, says Todd Howard. So the next mobile game from Bethesda, it says it'll be a more substantial experience compared to the developer's previous phone titles. So this was, he indicated this when he was on the Lex Friedman podcast, that they're putting a lot of effort into a new mobile title, new mobile platform. They haven't announced it yet. And I'm just curious, guys, in the context of a story we did, I think it was 2 or 3 weeks ago now, where Take-Two had sort of middle of the road results and a lot of softness on their mobile efforts. I sort of put and maybe you guys disagree on the premise here. I put Take-Two and Bethesda in the same kind of gaming developer company, right? They're more story-driven games. They're more, they're titles that are a bit deeper, a bit more immersive, like Elder Scrolls, where you can disappear into it for hundreds of hours, and not so much sort of the mobile, like quick hit, give me the dopamine hit and move on kind of style. And it seems like with Take-Two Mobile hasn't worked all that well. Why do you think Bethesda is going down this path? And do we think they will do better? Is this the right move for Bethesda in your mind?
I guess I have a couple thoughts here. Number one, I mean, Bethesda's owned by Microsoft, right? So this could also be part of, I think we've talked about the last couple of weeks. Phil Spencer made a bunch of comments about how important mobile was. We posited at the time that he was kind of just saying that, or how important mobile was in the context of them acquiring Activision Blizzard. I think we posited that was just him posturing in order to try to get the deal done, and mobile really wasn't that important part of that acquisition. Maybe it's possible that mobile actually is important to Microsoft, and they're seeing that as really important for them to reach the next billion gamers. So they want all of their titles to go to mobile. That's explanation number one. Number two, I would say, we have seen in the last year a lot of these like more core titles come to mobile and have some success. Diablo Immortal has done well. Apex Legends, we just talked about last week, having done pretty well, won some awards. Call of Duty Mobile has, of course, been successful. So, what does that work for like the Elder Scrolls and, whatever the other games they have that they might put onto mobile? I don't know. But those are just some thoughts there.
Lindsay, how do you feel about, you're probably the biggest mobile gamer of the bunch of us. Do you think we should see more mobile games from mobile first developers rather than trying, like Microsoft forcing a company that has historically been console and PC more than anything to stick to sort of what they know best?
That's a really good question, but I honestly think that that is a time will tell kind of answer. Um, I think that Jeff was really onto something with saying that Phil Spencer is prioritizing mobile, and that is probably a large part of what's happening here. I wonder what the investment is into this and what the expected return is. As in, I'm wondering about what the scale of this project is. Are they trying to make the next mobile game, or are they trying to make a mobile game? And I think that that is the answer to that question is what my answer to is this a good idea hinges on totally. Because I think you're right. If they're trying to make the next mobile game, I don't think that they're the company to do it. They should probably work more on staying in their lane with the successes that they've had. If they're trying to make a mobile game that is reasonably successful, then probably this is a good sort of experimentation for what's happening in the mobile market. But there's a little bit there's not enough clarity here for me to be like, this is, this is the right business decision. I would guess internally there's a lot more clarity on that. So I'll go ahead and trust them.
But do you guys feel that at some point mobile just gets way too crowded? Because you have, again, historically PC and console developers doing more mobile on all fronts in all companies, right? You have Jeff companies like yours that pump out mobile games at a prodigious rate, right? At some point, like not everyone can, maybe I'm the only one that thinks this, can everyone really pivot to mobile and there still be enough appetite for this?
That's like asking if there are too many movies made because there's already been a bunch of great movies made to me. There's two different categories of mobile games.
I
Some are
didn't say there was a lot
mainstays.
of great games being made, but yeah, I
Yeah,
see your
but
point.
the point is some are mainstays and other ones are simply people jumping from thing to thing as new things come out. So no, I don't think it's oversaturated.
What I think it is Bethesda had some limited success with like Blades, which is one of their Elder Scrolls titles that they brought to mobile from the Skyrim franchise, Elder Scrolls franchise. And then also, if any of you guys are familiar and play Fallout, they did a very cutesy mobile game called Fallout Shelter, which I played religiously for a while. I think they had limited success with a couple of titles with very limited effort and just said, hey, let's lean into that direction and see if that could be another thing for us. I would be a lot more excited about this story if it included more information on Elder Scrolls 6, because Skyrim's been out for like 10, 11 years now. Let's get the ball rolling. So I agree with you, Paul. Like, let's stay in our lane. Let's make what everyone's expecting us to make, and it's long overdue. But it's I'm gonna, just because of the studio, I'm gonna try what they put out because I'm familiar with their other franchises and because the mobile games that they have put out have been okay. Like, they've been fun enough, and I don't think people are looking for that AAA blockbuster experience in a mobile game, and so maybe that effort also for them is of the level where they could devote a little bit of their manpower, generate some revenue. We do know how much these console and PC games cost, how many hours they take. So maybe this is something also help keep them employed or keep the contracts coming in as well when they don't have that next big thing to work on. Though, Bethesda probably less at risk of that than someone else.
Jimmy, let's talk about a game that took way too long to make. And actually, I want to read Matt's comment here. It says, sounds like Bethesda wants to break more into Asia/India. That could be Microsoft's focus, but then Microsoft should go buy more mobile game publishers. That's what I don't understand, right? Go buy more mobile game developers and let the studios that you bought that make PC and console games continue to make PC and console games. That to me is the weird part. But
we did cover real quick, Paul. We did cover a Microsoft investment in India story in October,
fair.
if you guys remember.
That's true.
So when you're saying put your money where your mouth is, they did. I don't think I've seen anything else besides that story, but we did see them put, was it like 80 million, I thought, or 100 million round into
I agree
Indian
with
company.
Matt's statement.
Yeah.
It's just, should Bethesda be sort of leading the charge into that market? That's the question, right? Like, I'm not sure about that. These next two stories, guys, I want to put them back to back because I'll put them under the category of these stories annoy Paul, and maybe they annoy you. But the headline here is, on the first one, a Cyberpunk 2077 Game of the Year edition is coming. So they're going to release the Game of the Year edition, likely in 2023. It says it's going to include all of the DLC and everything. It's very typical. They did this with The Witcher 3, because it was Game of the Year. Cyberpunk never won any Game of the Year award. And so they're just using this term now to call like a complete set, a Game of the Year edition. I want you guys to take a side here. Are you on board with calling sort of complete versions of games Game of the Year editions, even if they never win any Game of the Year award? Or are you on the side of it has to win a Game of the Year award to have a Game of the Year edition?
I've always been a traditionalist at heart, but this doesn't bother me. I mean, it's just merchandising, right? Like, this is like saying, like, when you go into New York City and you see like world's best coffee, you're like, wait, I'm pretty sure this is not actually the world's best coffee. Like, I've tried other ones. I think it's just sort of something that they throw together. It's a complete set. They can merchandise it. They could sell it. They could, rather than, selling you something for $30, something from $10, and something for $10, they'll sell you the whole thing for $40, and you get more conversion. Like, I think it's just kind of like good business practice. It doesn't offend me that it didn't win Game of the Year. It's a funny story, but like, I don't feel outraged by it.
Boo. I strongly disagree. I strongly disagree. This is not gaming culture. This is not earned. This, you know what? I'm going to save my thoughts. You can listen to it on our Business of Esports Podcast of the Year episode, and I'll put out all my thoughts on why this is wrong at the end of the year. But it seems unearned, and I get the gimmick, Jeff, and I love the comparison. There always reminds me of the Buddy the Elf scene with Will Ferrell, right, when he walks in and congratulates that New York coffee shop. But no, I don't agree with this. And also the game had a ton of problems. So like, yeah, they made a fantastic rebound, but it's just kind of ironic more than anything else, because it's probably the last game that would have ever won Game of the Year, given how upsetting the launch was. So no, wrong, or rubs me the wrong way on all fronts.
Lindsay?
Yeah, I'm going to be a total hypocrite here, because I was the one last week who was like, these awards are crap and nobody cares about them. But I also think that it is weird to put Game of the Year on it's like, yeah, you should probably win one of those crap awards if you're gonna then use it in your marketing. So yeah, definitely a little hypocritical. I actually sort of agree with both Jeff and Jimmy. Like, I think it's very inauthentic and kind of weird marketing, but I also do just think it is marketing and it's not that big of a deal. It definitely like rubs me the wrong way, but I guess I don't know many people who would take it seriously enough to not buy it if they were already planning on buying this, if that makes sense. If they already wanted this product, I don't think that this sleazy marketing tactic is going to turn them off from it.
It's a good point. No one will be like, hey, it didn't win Game of the Year. Like, I'm not going to buy it now.
I think this is more like aunties during Christmas time buying their nephew a video game and being like, oh, it's Game of the Year. It's got to be good, right? Like, I think it's more a holiday gimmick, like Jeff said, for shopping or for marketing.
Matt says, how many times is CD Projekt going to launch the same game? Too many, Matt. Feels like they're saying, see, the game would have sold like crazy if we had completed it on the first try. That could be. Look, I feel like you guys made me come around, because I was totally annoyed by this. I hated it. I didn't like it at all. It pissed me off that you call something Game of the Year edition and it doesn't actually win Game of the Year. But then, Jimmy, I heard you say, let's do a Podcast of the Year edition. And I'm like, maybe we take this tactic and run with it. Adam says, hey, everyone, been a while. Happy to see you all again. Adam, so great to have you. It's always not the same without you. Yeah, did we come to a conclusion, or was this like a tie? Lindsay, you were on the side of yes or no?
In the middle.
You
Pick
can't
a
be in the
side.
middle. Pick a side.
Yeah, you can't be in the middle. I think I lost. You guys were all in agreement against me, but
No,
Lindsay gave me a
I
bone.
think I'm on the side of I don't really care, and they can market it how they want. So
Okay, so it's a tie. It's a
What's
tie.
it's an emotion versus logic kind of argument, right? Like Jeff's on the side of the, hey, this is making them money, and Paul and I were like, it just doesn't feel right. Yeah.
We're in like soccer World Cup season now, so ties are going to be a thing, right? It's just no one wins. All right, the second sort of article that annoyed me this week, and I was celebrating this actually, but it annoyed me that they didn't go far enough. The headline was, the Game Awards will be significantly shorter this year due to feedback. Which I thought was a very kind way of phrasing this. Keeley hopes to create a more streamlined show. So basically what they're saying, which it takes place tomorrow, so December 8th, that they're going to try and make the show a little bit shorter. He said, I won't say anything officially until we're through our rehearsals, but we think it's going to be a significantly shorter show this year, which, you 3 days or 4 days before the show, you'd think he'd have a slightly better idea of the length. And that he says he hasn't felt this good about a show in a while. They have a fair number of new game announcements. They'd feature 30 to 40 games, but no idea on the specific runtime. It is worth mentioning that last year's show ran 3 hours and featured a 45-minute pre-show, so almost 4 hours in total.
Wow.
What
do you guys think of a shorter show here?
it's a no-brainer to me. I talked to a couple people who went last year, and they basically wound up actually being nearly 5 hours in total, just with getting there and pre-show stuff. And most people were entirely burnt out by the end. So yeah, if you're going to have a pointless award show, at least do it on a schedule that works for everybody.
But does the previous story not make these award shows completely even more useless than they already were? Right? If we're not even following what games are winning awards, and anyone can just call their game award-winning, basically, does this not totally nullify the value of an award show even further?
I think these award shows have basically become like just a recurring version of what E3 used to be. It's all about the trailers. Like, I don't think anyone cares who wins game of the, maybe the developers who built it have some pride, but like, there's no way people are tuning in like it's the Oscars. Like, who's gonna win? Who's gonna win like best new, RPG of the year award if they give that out? Like, I think it's purely just because people want to see the new game trailers, which is good. I think that's good for the industry. I mean, granted, a lot of that's on YouTube, a lot of that's on Twitch. Like, you can find it other places, but I think it's cool to have, like, I'm someone who used to love going to the movies, and I would love the previews. Like, it was like my favorite part of the movies. And I think there's something cool about that, like watching a trailer in real time when everyone else is seeing it for the first time. And then it's buzzing on social media. So that's why I think there's still a small amount of value in these things. Not much, but a small amount. It's not about the awards.
But the movie business manages to do this without having a 4-hour show, right? Like, what's the trailer I saw the other day? God, now I can't even remember. But a trailer for some new movie coming out, and it's because I saw it on YouTube, and because 10 zillion people had watched it on YouTube, and it's like, I just found this YouTube surfaced. I didn't need a 4-hour show to show me 40 movie trailers. I don't know. Well, like, why is this a gaming thing? Why did gaming invent this?
I mean, I think you're getting into a very large question of like, why do people like what they like? Because they do. Like, there's no, I don't
Do we
know
think
that
a shorter show will be more successful? Let's put it that way.
I
Yes.
do. Yeah, I do. I know I joke, and I am with you that I don't always understand the exact point of award shows. But I do think that it's a moment in time where people get together to talk about a specific thing in a specific industry. And I think that having the trailers there has been really key to the success of the show. And for the myriad of reasons that people like things, they show up and they enjoy themselves. And I think they would enjoy themselves significantly more if it wasn't 5 hours.
Here's my hot take, guys, and maybe it's not so hot. Every year, this show will get shorter and shorter until eventually no one watches it anymore and it goes away. Because this is what happens with other award shows, right? Like they peak at some amount of length where people are like, why are we even watching this? And then eventually they get shorter and shorter and fade into irrelevance. And you realize the industry doesn't actually need this, that people can get information about new games 10 million other places that are way better and way more effective than an award show. So I suspect this will be a trend where it will get shorter and shorter and shorter every year and then eventually just fade into irrelevance. Anyways, you guys weren't as bothered as I was by this, so we'll move on. I have a couple more stories here, and
lightning round.
No, I don't have enough stories for a lightning round. This one I thought was interesting. This is VOV in the news. So this is the Savvy owned, or the PIF owned. It's a Saudi Arabian based company that builds land centers in Saudi Arabia. And it says Newcastle United, which I had never heard of before, is excited to announce an innovative strategic collaboration. This is obviously on their own website, with Vov, a leading online and offline gaming company who will work with the club to grow a global digital and esports presence. So Vov, a subsidiary of Savvy Games Group, they're going to be collaborating. It says working with Vov will allow us to engage with Newcastle United fans via the popularity of esports and gaming in Saudi Arabia. It says our collaboration will provide an exciting platform for our fans to engage with. Vov will also lend their knowledge and experience to the club in Saudi, where we continue to expand the club's fan base as one of the country's most supported Premier League football clubs. So I guess Newcastle United, I didn't know this, is a soccer team, right? And they have esports ambition of some kind. Maybe I'm the wrong audience for this, but what surprised me, and the reason I wanted to bring it up, is this feels like a very small name given the scope of the $38 billion announcement. It's felt like, Microsoft partners with like Joe's Pizza Little League team. And I'm exaggerating to make a point, right? But it felt lopsided. Maybe I'm just not enough of a soccer fan. I'm curious to get your thoughts, guys. It's a bit of a buzzword soup announcement. So
Chris Cohen's coming in with the hot take information.
12th most recognized soccer team in the world. All right.
Yeah, they're not small.
I mean, but when you're spending 38 billion,
here's a
you
question.
go for number 12?
Who owns them? Is there like some Saudi ownership like that? Because doesn't Saudi own a soccer team? Are they trying to sign Cristiano Ronaldo, or someone owns? Like
Those are local Saudi teams. That's like a Saudi, like a Saudi league team, essentially. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's trying to sign Ronaldo.
Yeah. Overall, I mean, it's interesting that this soccer team, I actually think it's more interesting in the reverse. I think it's interesting because the way the article read was that the soccer team is looking to tap into the Saudi population, and they're doing that using gaming, which is interesting. That's the kind of, I mean, this is something I think we know, but it's maybe not that well known outside people who are really following the region, really following gaming and esports. The fact that like esports and gaming is the way that they chose to go attract these new fans, I think is a pretty good indicator or signal, at least.
But, yeah, I mean, Jeff, I'll just push back a little bit. Like, first of all, FIFA is really big in Saudi Arabia, so the soccer connection does make sense. It's probably, if not the biggest game, it's number 2. I think it's number 1, but I don't want to say that without the data in front of me. But I'm pretty sure it's number 1. But the reality here is like there have been missteps in the US around traditional sports teams trying to use esports to access younger audiences, right? Like this has not always really worked that well. I'm curious if you think that it maybe goes down that path.
I that's my concern too. We're excited about the region. You see them spending a lot and innovating in new ways, but this seems to me like a mistake that they should have been cautioned against based off of other failures. I mean, you can point to partnerships like Esports Entertainment Group that had tons of partnerships with pro sports teams, And what did those look like on paper versus what did those look like when they were activated? Or were they just PR move? You know what I mean? Like you see this happening for other companies in similar partnerships that maybe they didn't activate the way they thought they would. But either way, it's a tough thing, I think, to transcend traditional sports audiences with esports audiences that have seemed very much in their own camps. Soccer, I think, might be a difference maker there. Like you said, Paul, and perhaps also that region, why this club versus others, to Chris's point, and they are a well-known club, they are large, but why wasn't this maybe a more local club where Evolve and the Saudis are going after a traditional sports partnership, maybe picking names or teams that their region already is familiar with and favors? Maybe they do, and that's why this was chosen. But either way, it's a very risky move when you've seen so many failures of traditional sports and esports. Jeff, it looks like
I think where some of these sports teams have gone wrong in the past is if you're viewing it as a way to get new fans for your sports team, I don't think that's going to work, because it's like, if people want to just play Rocket League, people who had no interest in being fans of Newcastle United just wanted to play Rocket League or FIFA or whatever, they could do that without. Why do they have to engage with Newcastle United or the Jets or whoever? Pick a traditional sports team. It's irrelevant. They could play that their passion without doing it for that team. Where I think the engagement could work is these activations could work is when you look at it as like an engagement tool, where you have someone that's already a fan of that traditional sports team and also a fan or an enthusiast of this esport. You can then marry those two together, where it's like, hey, you love playing Madden. Hey, you love the Jets. Want to play Madden to win Jets tickets. Okay, cool. Now you're getting some engagement. You throw a sponsor against it. Maybe you make a little bit of money. I don't think it's a gangbusters business idea, but if you're in the business of doing fan engagement, that's an activation that can work. But you're not going to convince someone who just loves playing FIFA or FIFA is maybe a bad example. You're not going to convince some 12-year-old kid who loves playing Call of Duty that all of a sudden they should be a Minnesota Vikings fan because you hosted one tournament. Like, that just doesn't make sense. So.
It feels a little bit like 2019 esports playbook, right? Like, I feel like the industry has moved on and realized this is not as obvious as it seems. On paper, it seems obvious until you've sort of been down that path or at least seen it, and you realize this more often than not, it has failed, right? And the crossover is not as strong. The benefits to both sides not as strong, and that you would think, again, with the billions they're spending, to focus on gaming and esports standing on its own rather than turning to traditional sports as a crutch feels like a misstep to me.
Something we would have advised against on this show. And to Jeff's point, though, I do see the marketing value there, but then I think that's the kind of thing where you announce the event as opposed to a full-fledged partnership, right? Something a lot cheaper as well as more limited in time, and then you evaluate the success of that activation within those parameters in that audience.
All right, guys, I have one last story before we move on, before we wrap up here, I should say. And of course, I had to, with my coming back this week, I noticed it was the most obvious sort of shortcoming of last week's episode without me. And so I had to correct this week. And that is, we needed a gaming chair story because it was something that we needed to do. Lindsay. And so, Lindsay, I want you to sort of take the lead on this. It's Cooler Master has this gaming pod now. They compare it to the pod in WALL-E, which I thought is pretty funny. It's made from genuine leather. I don't know why they had to put that, like, leather. Just saying it was leather. Leather would have been fine, I think. And it has a motorized dome. It has a single 34-inch monitor up to 3 27-inch monitors. It has built-in surround sound system, hidden compartments, the whole bit. And I don't think they've announced any pricing. They have not, or a release date. But if you remember, it's similar to that Thronos we saw and the Scorpion chair thing that we saw. What do you think of the Cooler Master version of this pod? And are we getting to a point where we think everyone might be gaming in pods eventually?
Okay, well, to your second point, until price comes down significantly, no. But I take no issue with the pod, especially as someone who has lacked mobility for the last 3 weeks. I would love to be living in a pod right now, instead of trying to participate in the real world in my house. I think it would be significantly more fun. So, I like this kind of stuff. I mean, to your point about, what mass consumer adoption, I don't think we're there yet, but for the people who can't afford it and who want to afford it, I think these kinds of things are really cool and really fun.
Jimmy, Cooler Master will have to send us one for review, right?
Maybe 2. I think we need one in our Middle East headquarters, one in our Los Angeles offices. It looks really cool for those of you guys that are watching, or if you're listening and you don't see this, I would go Google it. To Lindsay's point, cost has to be driven way down. It kind of parallels VR to me, and that I see the success of something like this really at a LAN center or at a team's headquarters or facility where it's more of a prop and a gimmick that is kind of a special experience, as opposed to just I mean, these things are big too, right? So you have to have a large office or a large room in your home to have one. So I would love to have one of these. These look awesome. I would probably go with the 327-inch monitors personally for how I use my computing. But yeah, I want to see more innovation like this. And to Lindsay's point, I want to see lower price points as well.
Alex says, a notch up from the McDonald's chair. I mean, that McDonald's chair was pretty awesome. I have to
had
admit.
fry holders, so I don't know, Alex, what your priorities are. But
and Adam Donarski says, bye. Sorry, Adam, I thought I almost missed that. Bye. Just in capital letters, bye. Which I like. I agree. I would buy one too. We need Cooler Master to either send us one or sell us one, because I think this is exactly what I was looking for. It's to me, it's more sleek than the Scorpion one, which I think is more of an eyesore. This could almost go in a living room, if you ask me. It's Jeff. Could almost. All right, guys. That wraps up this week's weekly news show. I just want to remind everyone, make sure to go listen to the podcast this week. It's a fun episode. Also, make sure to follow us everywhere, on LinkedIn, on YouTube, on Instagram, on TikTok, on Twitter, you name it, on every platform. Special thank you to all of you guys who participated in the chat this week. We really appreciate all of you. Thank you especially to Jimmy, Lindsay, and Jeff for the amazing work they did on last week's episode. If you didn't catch it, make sure to go listen to it. And thank you for today. And don't forget, guys, the weekly news show is every Wednesday live at 2:30 p.m. Eastern time. So if you're listening to this after the fact, try and make it for next week's show, Wednesdays at 2:30 p.m. Eastern time. And most important of all, the future is fun. We'll see you guys next week.